Good evening, everyone. Hello. And good morning to those of you who are out there in Asia. It's very nice to be with you all again. Tonight, we want to deal with the idea of patient acceptance. And that is part of the main message that you find in the Dasabhumika Sutra. So when I started looking for this, I was surprised. I found that the text gave me a definition which I was not expecting. I was expecting something which would tell me how to handle what I call impatience. Instead, what surprised me is that this sutra defined kshanti, the word that we normally have translated as patience, instead translated as kindness and compassion. The sutra says, taking kindness and compassion as the foremost, the Bodhisattva refrains from inflicting harm on beings. And this is what constitutes the perfection of kshanti. So I got to thinking about it, and impatience, I think, is mainly tied to anger. If I'm not getting what I want, if things aren't happening fast enough, the first reaction is anger. And we see this here in Los Angeles on our freeways. We have what people call road rage. And road rage is just another term for impatience. And people are, of course, impatient. Of course, they're angry at times. Many of them are spending days of their life sitting on the freeway. And it's not a good place to spend your life. They would rather be at home or in a place that they wish to be instead of sitting in traffic. But then it came to me that indeed kindness and compassion are an antidote to anger. That when I'm angry, I have sometimes forgotten the real reason for why I'm doing something. And I may lash out or want to lash out at people because I'm frustrated. I'm angered because things aren't going the way I want them to go. I'm having to learn something about patience. I have a condition which is called restless legs. And restless legs means that when you lie down at night to try to go to sleep, your legs start jumping, twitching, and there's no way sometimes to stop it. I've been taking medication for it, but the body has become accustomed to the medication and it doesn't work anymore. I'm taking all these pills and nothing is happening in terms of helping me. So I have decided to go off those medications. And at first I thought I can just stop. And then I began to read, and it said, don't stop this medication suddenly, because if you do, you will have serious side effects. So I'm working with the doctor to try to taper off. And it's very frustrating. I want to just throw those pills away because they aren't helping. But yet I can't just drop them because my body is so accustomed to them that it's going to do crazy things if I don't take them for a while longer. So it's very hard sometimes to have patience. But that's not what the sutra seems to be talking about. It's talking about kindness and compassion instead. So when it talks about kindness and compassion, the Bodhisattva, says the sutra, is asked to explain the 10 levels that are motivated by kindness. And as you know, in this sutra, everything is in series of 10. So, of course, there are 10 levels motivated by kindness. I think this is an amazing lesson for us all, that our patience, our ability to tolerate, our ability to take what comes, our ability to withstand whatever pressures we're under, comes with kindness. And the kindness comes in 2 types. As we've said many times in the Course, kindness is kindness to oneself first, and then kindness to others second. It's like forgiveness. Before we can forgive others, we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves for all the issues and all the events that we wish we hadn't done, or we look back and think, why did I do that? Why didn't I not do that? And why didn't I do something different? But we have to be careful when we look back. As some of you know, I'm trying to write a book on 70 years of Buddhist studies. I've resisted looking at my life, but now I think it's important, perhaps, as I said to a friend today, what I finally came to realize is, at my age, I have outlived all the Buddhist scholars that I know of in the world. I can't find one that's older than I am. So that means I'm the corporate memory in many ways of what's going on in the field of Buddhist studies. And so I have to look back, and I feel that I have some obligation to share what has happened for history, for the issues that are before us. But as I work with my memories of what went on 60 years ago, 70 years ago, 50 years ago, I think often if I had known what I know now, I would have lived my life in a very different way. And yet, we are not given this information ahead of time. You can't have information until you've lived it. And so we have to live and live with our decisions. So that's why when the Bodhisattva is asked to explain kindness, it's very important to be kind to ourselves, not to justify our actions, not to say, I didn't make a single error, or all the problems that happened because of somebody else. It's not the way it was. I lived this life as you are now living your life, as your lay people who come to you, they are currently living their life. And the question is, can we look at our current life in such a way that we don't have to look back 70 years, 50 years, 60 years later and say, why didn't I do something different? Can we live our life motivated by kindness, by compassion, by wisdom, by knowledge, by insight, so that we can say we've lived it in a way which has not been destructive. We've lived it in a way which has been helpful, we hope, to others. So Bodhisattva is asked to do 10 levels of kindness. So we're told in the sutra that the Bodhisattva perfects the 10 things, the 10 dharmas that are used to purify the levels. That is, in a sense, when we say, I would like to live my life so that I'm not harming, so I'm not doing damage, so I'm not harming myself. We're actually talking about how to purify our lives, how to purify our actions. How can I purify what I'm doing today to such a degree that I will not cause harm? So the sutra says you need to perfect, everybody needs to perfect the 10 things of life by purifying. And how do you purify? Well, the text says you purify by faith, having faith, believing in the Buddhist texts, believing in the Buddhist teachings. We purify by being compassionate, compassionate for ourselves, compassionate for others. We purify by kindness. It's hard sometimes to think, what is the kind thing to do for another person? What's the most important kind act that we can do? Ask yourself the question right now today. If I told you, for all the people that you're teaching, can you purify your action And how would you do it? Would it change? Or are you really lucky that you have, in fact, purified your actions? And what you're doing is exactly what you want to do. So purification involves renunciation. I have to somehow get rid of the idea that everything revolves around myself. I have to get rid of the idea that there is a self, unchanging, completely with me in an unchanged form for all of the moments that I live, that I have myself, that myself is always unchanging, that I've always felt myself. The Buddha say we have to, first of all, in a sense, renounce the idea that the self is unchanging and permanent. We have to also next purify by being vigorous, being tireless. That is, that we have the ability to really work, number one, do hard things. Number two, stick with it to the end. And how do you get that energy? Where does that energy come from that allows us to never get tired, to never lose compassion, to not have compassion burnout? Burnout is such a big issue for all of us and for everybody in the world. How do you keep from burning out? Because life is not easy. Living it is not easy. And so how long do you do something before you begin to feel burnout? For myself, I began to know when burnout is nearby. And it is what I think the sutra is talking about. The minute I begin to resent people or to find myself being impatient and not being aware of their needs, being more aware of my needs, and being critical and being hostile almost to others. Whenever that begins to happen, I know I need to take a rest. I need to find a place in myself where I can rest and recuperate and regenerate my energy and be ready to face the next big event. And so purification of our action, purification in every moment, is what the sutra is trying to tell us here. And then one of the things is if I'm feeling impatient and I'm wondering whether I'm just doing too much and how can I live like this, and that if in that moment I remember the kindnesses that I have received, and do I know how to repay those kindnesses? If I turn my object of focus away from all the things that I say are too much, too hard. And I began to remember the kindnesses that are shown to me. Many of you know that Shilai Temple provides me with my housing, and that I have a person who has dedicated long hours to helping take care of me. All I have to do when I'm feeling that things are getting out of hand is just to remember how much kindness I am living with every day. And then ask myself, how can I repay that kindness? Some people have told me, you don't need to repay anything. You've already done it. You've helped people for a long time. You've taught all that. But for me, that's not good enough. I want to repay the kindness. I want to ask myself, how can I repay kindnesses? And it's not so much that I do something specifically for that particular individual. Buddhism constantly says, for all living beings, all sentient beings. The Bodhisattva is compassionate for all beings, all the time. And so I need to repay the kindness by remembering that whatever I do, I must do it for all living beings, and not just somebody who has done me a favor, as much as I can appreciate and want to reward them for that. But to constantly live one's life understanding that we must help all living beings. I love the passage, this next passage. The path of a Buddha is as difficult to describe as a track of a bird through the air. Birds fly through the air and there's nothing left behind to show where they were. How do I track a bird in the air? How can one succeed in looking at the aspects of the Buddha? And it says these matters are difficult. It's difficult to figure out exactly what to do and when to do it. And the only thing is to keep the vow of kindness and compassion. That is something we can never lose when we're trying to deal with things where they're very difficult for us to track because they're invisible. We can't see them, or we can't quite comprehend what's happening to us. We can't quite decide how to repay people who do something for us. We can't decide exactly how to teach. Just keep the vow of kindness and compassion. And that can be the major way of leading forward. So the four immeasurable thoughts, they require that we identify with all beings everywhere, and that everybody is equally deserving. It's so easy, and there are many jokes and many negative remarks made about that it's one thing to give to the poor, but you only want to give to the deserving poor, the deserving. And how do you decide who's deserving? For the Buddhists, they're saying you have to understand that everybody, everywhere, is equally deserving of our attention, of our kindness. I have told you that when I was visiting in prison, I went to a rather famous businessman and asked him to help support the prison work. And he said, "No, I won't give a penny to prison work because I only give to those who are worthy. I give to good people. I never give to bad people." That's certainly something that we find in the culture of China. But in the Buddhist text, that's definitely not a Buddhist teaching. A Buddhist teaching is every being anywhere in the world is equally deserving of my kindness and my compassion, of my sympathetic joy and my equanimity. I must equally give and praise every single individual, not just special people. So the Bodhisattva uses the power of the roots of goodness to rescue beings. This is just saying what we just said in the last slide. The Bodhisattva, the roots of goodness. We have this program here at Shilai Temple, the 3 acts of goodness: body, speech, and mind. We have to use the power of those 3 kinds of goodness, whether we do it with our body, whether we do it with our minds, whether we do it with our speech. We have to use those 3 forms of karma, those 3 forms of action as the roots of goodness to rescue beings. And I think that the very idea that some people are more deserving than others is not the teaching. It is not what Guan Yin does. Guan Yin, it doesn't say if you're going to pray to Guan Yin, you've got to make yourself worthy. The texts never say that Guan Yin requires us to be worthy. She is following this roots of goodness where every single individual in the world is equally worthy. Everyone. And I don't know if you can feel how wonderful that is, to feel that it's like when you're standing in a line at a store and you feel, I'm just one of many. Instead, when you're standing in the line, to feel every single person in this line is equal. I am one with every single person. We're all standing in line. And that's the way we live. All of us are living difficult lives. The Buddhists say the first noble truth, all of us live with discontent, with suffering. All of us. All of us live with the knowledge that we will grow old, that we will get sick, that we will die. All of us, all of us. And so we have to keep in mind that when we feel that every single individual is worthy of support and help, it always includes ourselves. And when we look around us, and if we feel when we're looking around us that we're looking at individuals who are deserving of help, deserving of kindness, deserving of everything that we can give for them, then I think we have lived up to part of what a bodhisattva does in this world. Now, if we want to purify, how do we do it? If I say, well, fine and good, but I just know that I'm making distinctions. I like some people better than others. I can't feel the same for every single person. There are people that make me feel like I want to give to them and help them. And there are other people that just turn me off or leave me cold. But if we acquire, it says in this sutra, if we try to acquire the knowledge of the Buddha, the knowledge of what the Buddha teaches, and we try to acquire it for the sake of purifying our actions to such a degree that we have great kindness, great compassion. And this great kindness and this great compassion is for all beings equally, everywhere. And to know that we are part of the Buddha's teachings, which are equally for us as for anybody else. The Buddha's teachings are just as much for ourselves as they are for others. They were given equally to everybody. Everybody got a piece of this. Everybody got the help. Everybody is part of it. Then we feel that we are part of a larger group. And we don't have to worry about whether or not a person is worthy or unworthy or good or bad. No, kindness and compassion are for every single person. Every single person. And when I can't do that, when I say, I just cannot feel kindness towards somebody, then that's when we begin to say, then I need some purification of my action. I need some purification of my thought. How can I purify my thought? This is why I love to read sutras. Every time I read a sutra, every time I look at one, I find something new. I find something which helps purify my thinking. I find myself being able to think and operate in a different way just from the words that I find there. I find that what comes to me is great compassion, great kindness. And I don't have to feel that you're going to burn out because you're giving it all away. No, we have to give it to ourselves first. If you're not kind to yourself, you'll never know how to be kind to others. And if you can't have compassion for oneself, and we can't forgive ourselves, and forgiving ourselves is not then to make light of what we did. We can forgive ourselves, but we don't forget. And we realize how much that we have to purify. But never does the Buddhist try to lead us down a path that leads us to fatigue, to despair, to a lack of energy. Far from it. The Bodhisattva delights in teaching, and he abandons every other intention. Teaching, and it's not just that we teach others, we teach ourselves. I think that one of the ways in which I find my strongest practice these days is when I'm teaching you and I bring to mind something that deals with my life and my problems. And I use that. I delight in teaching because it's teaching myself. I'm teaching myself all the time. As long as I can teach myself, as long as I can stay open to hearing what is coming toward me with the words, the great compassion, the great kindness, all of these. That's the teaching which the Buddha never, says a Bodhisattva, never abandons. There's no other intention in teaching. I don't teach so people will praise me. If I do, then the teaching has been polluted. I need to purify it. If I feel that I want to say to myself, oh, look at me, what a wonderful teacher, then I better start purifying my thinking. My teaching is not to make myself feel good as opposed to other people. Proper teaching is to teach every single being equally, including myself. And if people think that they're only teaching others because they don't need to be taught, after all, they're the teacher. Shouldn't the teacher be the one that doesn't need to be taught? The teacher's the one who should know it all. No, instead, a teacher is one who teaches and understands that they have to constantly teach themselves. They have to constantly be aware that they need to purify their actions by teaching themselves and teaching others equally and abandon any other intention. So if we go to the basic ideas of Buddhism, birth has two functions. It brings forth our emergence as humans. We're born and we have, in this lifetime, find ourselves reborn as a human. But at the same time, that birth has given us this wonderful gift of life as a human, with all its suffering, with all of its agonies. It also sets in motion the process of aging. You're young, many of you, and you don't yet have to feel that you don't yet have to think about aging. And I used to feel that way until I aged. And then I thought, why is it nobody told me? You have to keep learning if you're going to age well. You have to learn how to age. You have to deal with life that's changing every day. Because birth brought me into the world, yes, but birth at the same time, a moment of birth is the moment when aging starts. So even a baby that we're looking at, the baby is aging. Everybody around us is aging. There is no one who is living who is not aging. And we must keep that in mind, that we not only have life, but that we have to understand it doesn't last forever. We have only a certain time on this earth. And when you look back, like from my point of view, from you're in your 90s, it all seems so short. It seems like, why is it that it seems so short? Because I've had a long, long life. And I think that what we don't recognize is that life is lived in the present moment. And that the only thing that we have has been the previous moment and this moment and this moment. And those moments appear to us to be happening so fast that we hardly see the difference between them. And so we don't see the aging. I often say that in the past, I used to have to get a driver's license every 5 years, and then they changed it to 10. And every time I got a new driver's license, I'd aged. And I thought, well, that's about as fast as my mind works. My mind works about 5 years. I can spot aging in myself. But I'm aging every moment. We're all aging every moment, and we need to keep this in mind. So therefore, the sutra says that the Bodhisattva are those of us who are teaching or trying to teach, should cause people to abandon their attachments within the three realms of existence. Abandon their attachments. It doesn't say to abandon their lives. It says our attachments, that's what we need to abandon. We need to see ourselves as we are, free of all the baggage that we carry, free of all the things that we project upon ourselves. And so if you say, I feel just the same as I did when I was 16, you've got some work to do. You aren't. I guarantee you, you must purify that thought. You must begin to understand that you have changed, that we've all changed. And that's the very nature of life itself. So I must try to teach people that the Buddhist texts tell us and tell me to abandon my attachments to the three realms of existence and to finally live in a state that transcends all the signs and is free of all the obstacles. And that's a wonderful goal, hard to experience, hard for us to finally achieve the insights of it. So therefore, we see a bodhisattva must lead all beings, remember that, through the hazardous and difficult regions within the vast wilderness of birth and death. As we have birth and death, it's hazardous. We live with hazards. We are dealing with life that is constantly a challenge to us. My mother, I often say, was a natural Buddhist. My mother would say when she saw a baby, she felt such compassion and sorrow at the thought that this little baby has come into the world and is going to have to face enormous problems in their lifetime. They are going to have to face aging. They're going to have to face illness. And they are ultimately going to have to face death. So we need to be helped to get through this life of difficulties. How do we, what map do we follow? I've shown you a picture here of a forest where you see no path. How do you know which way to go in such a place? How can you find your way through a forest where it's just endlessly the same? And we know that it's very difficult to be able to get through a place that has no map, that has no path. And that's why the Buddha say we must look for the pathway of the Buddha to deal with how to get through this wilderness that we're in. And at the end, it's very interesting to me that the sutra always says that you reach a city. When you're journeying, you reach a city. And I think that this is part of people in the Ganges basin where the Buddha was born and did his teaching, that people cut out in the rainforest, they cut out the trees and made an island, a city. And the passageway through was always from one city to another. And in a rainforest, you would think with all that lush growth that it would be a good place to be, but it's a bad place to be. There is no food because the rainforest, everything is in the canopy, high up at the top of the trees, not down below. So people in a rainforest find very little to eat. They find very little to deal with. They have to let in sunlight. And the trees are quite tall, and you can't climb all the way up to the canopy. I love the ride in Australia up at Cairns where you ride a cable car across the top of the rainforest. And as you look down into the canopy, you see so much life: butterflies, birds, flowers, insects. You see fruit. And yet, if they stop the cable car and take you down all the way to the ground in the rainforest, it's barren. Compared to the canopy, it's so limited. So we're all trying, in one sense, to reach a city. And a city is a metaphor for a state of mind in which we have all knowledge, a state of mind where we deal with life as it is, a state of mind where we have compassion, a state of mind where we forgive ourselves, a state of mind where we understand that everybody is equal and deserving. That's the state of mind we wish to, and we make a metaphor of it, and we call it a city in which we have this kind of knowledge. And people use these metaphors in order to understand what it all means. But sometimes we forget that it's just the metaphor for states of our mind, our thoughts. So a bodhisattva leads people along, and neither he himself or those beings that he leads are forced to go through difficult circumstances. The Buddha's teaching is not to be difficult. We don't teach because it's difficult. We don't try to make it difficult. We want to teach in such a way that the people who are being taught by us and that we are being taught by ourselves is not difficult or filled with problems which will cause us anguish and pain. The teaching itself should not cause the very thing that we are trying to avoid. So we have to learn how to teach people in such a way that it's not difficult or beyond control. So we're told that people are led to enter places that require all the knowledge of Tathagatas for admission. We have to have an ability to go to a place in our minds that requires all the knowledge of a Tathagata for admission. And you say, but I can't have all that. And yet, the Buddhists are telling us it's possible. We have the ability to have this knowledge of the Buddhas, and that we can use that knowledge. And one part of the knowledge of a Buddha is equal to all the knowledge of a Buddha, like a hologram. We just can, so long as we have a part of it, we are able to enter places that require all the knowledge of a Tathagata for admission. That's why I say the wisdom of a Tathagata is free from anguish, free from worry or sorrow. And it reaches all the way to another city, a great city of fearlessness. In other words, the teachings of the Buddhists are done to give people not worry, not sorrow, not guilt, not envy, but teaching which is free of all of this. And that the teaching is also the city or the state of mind of fearlessness. We're not afraid of the world. We're not afraid of what we're going to hear. We're not afraid to face even the most difficult part of our life, because the wisdom of the Buddha is free of anguish and worry and sorrow. And it reaches all the way to the city of fearlessness. So when we're reading the Buddhist text, we can be without fear. It's not going to lead us to a place of anguish. It's not going to lead us to a place of worry. It's not going to lead us to a place of sorrow. So in order to benefit all beings, this is something which reminds me of Master Xing Yun. You must become adept at the classics, at skills, at the cultural arts of the world, writing, mathematical calculation, classical works. You have to be educated. That's why Master Xing Yun started universities. People say, why did he start universities of all things? What is there about the university that makes it a place of spiritual development? But I think that Master Xing Yun was an example of somebody. He came from a very poor background. He always longed for more education. He sorrowed that he hadn't had it in his younger life. But he understood that in order to be a part of the Buddhist world, we need to be educated. We need to educate ourselves in all the things of life as much as possible. It doesn't say you have to go to college to be a Buddhist. You don't. But you have to have knowledge. You have to have training of some type. And so a bodhisattva becomes knowledgeable about whatever brings happiness to others. And that's a wonderful thought, isn't it? That we should learn how to teach so that whatever we teach brings happiness to others. It doesn't leave them worried and fretting and thinking, oh, I'm falling so short. The Bodhisattva teaches them to become knowledgeable about whatever brings happiness. And because the Bodhisattva has become imbued, filled with kindness and compassion, then he redoubles his quest. Because of his kindness, because of his compassion, he works even harder to rescue and protect all beings. And in himself, he perfects the tireless mind, the mind that doesn't burn out, compassion that doesn't give way to, I can't do it anymore, it's too much. The Bodhisattva has been able to understand how the brain works in a tireless way. And so, as we know, if we purify the level we live on, then we come to a place where we don't have the intention of killing anything that possesses life. And once we have achieved that state, people who, it's like in my house, I don't like spiders, I have to admit. So whenever I see a spider, I shout for help, and somebody has to come and take that spider outside and to not kill it, but to take it outside. Why don't I just kill it? It's because I recognize that I should give up the intention of killing anything that has life, that I should not do that, that I should abandon that and learn to live in the world. It's not that animals don't kill each other, because they do. And that's considered to be part of the bad karma of being born as an animal. If you're born as an animal, then you have the necessity of killing other life in order to live, often. So the Buddhists always championed the vulture, these beautiful, huge birds. The vulture never kills to eat. The vulture only cleans up death that has occurred. And no wonder the Buddhists talk about the vulture peak, the peak where all the vultures lived. That is the peak where the vultures that cleaned up death and purified the world, but didn't kill, never used their beaks, never used their strength to kill in order to eat. And so a bodhisattva, I love this one, brings us to a peaceful and secure location on the jeweled isle of complete knowledge. That's just a place in the mind. We need to find that place in our thoughts. Where is that peaceful and secure location in our own thinking that gives us comfort, that gives us support, that gives us the strength to live every day and to thrive and to teach and to guide? That's what I think is meant by the perfection of patience, kindness, compassion, and knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.